Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Skip, aka Skipntosh, here with my man Wes. Say what's up to the people, Wes.
Well, what's up, everybody? I hope everyone had a brilliant Christmas. You're ready for a wonderful New Year. I know I had a great Christmas with my family. Sounds like you did as well, Skip.
I did. And for it, like for many reasons, there was good family time. I got to spend time with my daughters, which is always very fulfilling to me. They're the best thing walking around on this planet to me. But Jonathan Hickman, House of X, Powers of 10. We all know the architect of that storyline and the writer of it. And Nick Dragotta, my personal favorite artist. And Frank Martin Jr., technically. Fantastic colorist. A lot of y'all might know him for the work that he did with it was wasn't it Donnie Cates, but it was Ryan Stegman that did
Ryan
the pencils and
Stegman's
then
the artist. Yeah.
yep. Okay, so Stegman as the artist, he did the pencils for the Carnage storyline. Was it Absolute Carnage?
hmm
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Um they all worked together on my favorite comic book, East of West, or I like to call sometime East of West, since that's the West that I know. They put out the last issue of it on Christmas. My birthday was 2 days before Christmas, and that was a birthday and a Christmas present to me. And I am so excited to get to be able to talk to my good buddy Wes about the book. Now, Wes, before we launch in, um, full disclosure, you hadn't caught up all the way to it, but you had read basically at least half of the story from what I remember you said. Is that correct?
I've read about half. I made, I think, the first 3 or 4 story arcs,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
am not caught up. But I know a little bit about East to West, not as
Absolutely.
much as you.
And we had been talking about it a little bit. The nice part about this story, and I'm saying this for anybody that like I want to make this statement. This is how you end a story. This is how you land a plane. I find in comics, um, probably more than most books because of how most books are distributed. Definitely more than film, but comics and TV shows, I feel, tend to have a tendency to not be able to stick the landing, especially if it's like an ongoing series in comics, or even with TV shows, it's a little easier as they're going episode to episode. But if you think of something like a soap opera, maybe that's a little closer to ongoing series in comics. When those end, most of the time, it's hard for them to stick the landing. When you start with the beginning in mind, if it's a limited series, which would be closer, I guess, to like a TV season, you know your beginning, middle, and your end. And what you really hope is that the end is good, but in the middle, they don't muck it up too much trying to extend out the story. Um, I had the pleasure of interviewing Nick Dragotta 2 years ago at Chris Hardwick's ID 10T festival, and I was it was already my favorite comic at the time. And you would think, okay, well, that's your favorite comic. You just wanted to go on forever. And I remember he told me this book has an end. It has a definite ending. And the second that I heard the words, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna feel bad. And I didn't feel bad at all. Immediately, I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. You guys know how it's gonna end. It has a definite end. A great story should have a great ending. I don't need it to go on forever. I want to get the story and I want it to end well. And I am happy, very, very happy to report that this is definitely a satisfying ending. Now, Wes, I wanted to ask you, since we're not gonna talk about the whole storyline, I'm kind of going to leave a little bit of that for later on, but just let's talk impressions. What was your, in knowing what you know about the first half, which honestly sets up so much to even understand why it ended this way without filling everything in? Like, what were your impressions on how this plane landed?
Well, they didn't lost it. They could tell they actually they had an end point in mind. I don't know if they specifically said this is a 45 issue series. I think they pretty much knew. We're going to 40 or 50 issues. That's what it's going to take us to get to the end point. You can tell that they had it because it all syncs up perfectly. So it's always nice when that happens. There's nothing worse than when you can tell, oh, they just started it, but they didn't know where it's going to end. So this ends fantastically. And my biggest impression of this, I'm a big Jonathan Hickman fan, but oh my lord, Nick Dragotta threw a little extra hot sauce in this comic. Like he went a little above and beyond in this one. Like you could tell that he put a little more effort into this final issue. He wanted it to make an impression, and boy does he. He makes a big impression, especially that opening scene was fantastic. I love Westerns. I like when you have two characters like having a little standoff. It's time to draw, and he does that great. And there's another scene I got to talk about this one where Death. He's finally meeting up with the other three horsemen of the apocalypse, and I think it's War is lipping off to him. He says, "Oh yeah," and he shoots her with his horse. And the next scene, there's these two boots on the ground, and then you can see like half of her body. I was like, that is just framed and illustrated perfectly. What a great scene in a comic book. It's like my favorite panel easily. So yes, my biggest impression is that Nick Dragotta, he went all out and he made sure that this was a special issue, and it looks fantastic.
Easily, and I can speak to that. Like I've been kind of talking to him DMs off and on, and two things I can say, Wes. One, they actually did plan on it ending at 44, so they did go one issue over, so that we can confirm that has been confirmed here. Two, I can also tell you that he did take extra time, because originally this was supposed to be released in October. In October, they were supposed to be done with it. I know he already had the script and everything was done. And me being excited, I would DM him and be like, "Hey man, how's it looking?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I got this many pages left." And then last time I talked to him, he said he had 20 pages left. And I was thinking 20 pages left. That means that like you've only done like a third of the book, because most of their issues would be about 30 pages, 31, 32. They go over a little bit, sometimes 37. But it was a 47 page issue. So when I saw that it was taking longer, and I went and I looked at the page count, I was like, oh, 47. Oh yeah, he took his time. There's some additional stories in here, some additional panels, and you could tell because when you look at it, like there's certain scenes where, like, to Wes's point, things are happening, like limbs are getting shot off, and I love his bullet time things where it's like the rest of the background, like it's almost like anime style, like you get all the streaks and the lights coming at you, and it's the person in the middle like drawing and firing, and the other person like shooting back from the hip. So like he does extra panels like that. And another thing that Nick doesn't waste is his panel layout. His panel layout is always like super cool, where like some of the panels will bleed over into the other ones, and just how they're arranged and such, man. This is someone who, like, this is what I like about Nick, and this is why he's my favorite artist. His style is a combination of like classic kind of comics, kind of like golden era, even mixed with like a very good direction going forward, like progress. It's like it's kind of, there's a little bit of anime, a little bit of classic this, and then like some forward thinking, some next level stuff too. So he's just so good with that, and you can tell this is someone who like loves comics and wants to give you visually the best comic he can. So that was really good. Okay, so Wes, so that you really liked that opening part, and his comedy within the panel was funny too. When I saw that it was just a feet left and him back, and then there was a little line that I think it was Famine had said to him, like, hey, what kills people and has two more legs than you, or something like that. Yeah. Come on, guys, it was just hilarious, man. But outside of that, what are a few other things? Well, actually, let's talk about the middle, because something important happens in the middle. Once we got past the first act, and usually, where things slow down is the second act of the comic. How did that take you through? Did you feel like it dropped off too much, or did it hold up pretty well?
No, I mean, compared to the beginning, it's kind of boring, but you could tell he was putting a bow on it. There's obviously a big conflict. I don't have all the details, where there are some losers and some winners, and they all came together to find some resolution, and you had to put an endpoint on it to move forward with this new America in the comic book. So I wish I had known more about the story and the conflict and the winners and losers. It's obvious that New Shanghai didn't turn out too well. And there's a few other I think was it New Texas maybe? There's a couple other
the Texas area where the Rangers are from. Yeah,
they did. There's a couple areas that didn't make it. That it looks like the New Nation or whatever they're called. I can't remember. Where they ended up being the kind of the big winners, but they're being good about it. They're like, yes, we won, but here, let's sign this peace agreement and let's have some peace here because we've known war too long. So it was necessary part. I don't think it disrupted the flow, but it wasn't the most exciting part of the comic.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, because there was something that I personally noticed about that part, because this is a story where you have all these factions. America gets, like the premise of it, for anybody that wasn't familiar, is the apocalypse starts. The four horsemen of the apocalypse are basically, sent down, and it's around the 1800s that it happens actually. And they begin the apocalypse, and death betrays the other three horsemen: famine, war, and pestilence. Betrays the other three. And it's like, well, why would what could conquer death? Why would death betray the other horsemen and in a sense even go against God? Why? And it's because of love. Death fell in love. He found love on earth, and also had a baby, had a son. And naturally, for people that, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, or if you're just semi-familiar with the Bible and the book of Revelation, which is probably the most controversial book, then in that you would know that the four horsemen of the apocalypse are sent down to begin the end times, Armageddon, the end of the world. So he betrays all of that, and it was for the perfect reason. And it was so poetic how Jonathan Hickman did it too. He fell in love. And so what else could conquer death but love? Now, what else is cool is that he tied it all in with death being conquered by love. Death and love coming together, they had a baby, and the baby was 666, the beast, the Antichrist. But what's so cool about it is the Antichrist is an innocent child. He's born into this world just like any other child is. He didn't come out like ready to go and ready to chop heads off and kill and all that stuff. Like it took those people, the leaders of the fractured United States, since it's or the ununited states, but it took them to say, oh, okay, well, you went against what was going to happen. So they all go after death. Ultimately, they corner him. They take away his wife. They take away his son, and they thought that they killed him, but death didn't die. So they have his child, and they are actually like, they had this thing over the kid's head. If you've read any, you've seen it, and they're like programming him. He can't see the world. His eyes are covered by these little displays, and he's got this little, kind of AI attachment to him, and they call it balloon. So when he sees the world, he doesn't see the world the way it actually is. He sees the world the way that they've programmed him to see it. Things that are beautiful to him look ugly. Things that are harmful to him look pretty and safe. And so they have his son, and they had his wife. His wife got away. But what's interesting is all those people that set that up to go against death, they were all leaders that would have been there, going back to meet again to try to come up with some sort of resolution. But instead, most of them ended up warring with each other. This faction got into it with this faction. Texas had one representative, and Texas is like distraught. They don't have any money. They don't have any military might. They're one of the poorest regions out there. Well, it's interesting. Both of them ended up getting killed. That was the scene that Wes was talking about. It was one ranger from that land, the person who used to lead the ranger land, and then the person who led like the New York based area. Well, they got taken out, and the ranger, he got hit too. So I don't think we ever saw the ranger die, but my assumption is the ranger didn't make it because he died too. So that land is gone.
I think he made it because the one dude, I think his name's Archibald, said, I can't believe I missed, because he got him kind of on the side, whereas he got shot right in the heart.
Yeah,
that's the way I interpreted it.
Yeah, no, you're right. He did. So both of them got hit. Archibald missed his target, but Archibald got lit up. And I love that dialogue too. Any last words? And then Archibald, he's like the silver-tongued devil. He's all lippy. Yeah, tell them that I was this. Tell them that I was a blam. He just shoots him in the head. That was so good. But the basic idea is that everybody that was on the council when we originally got introduced to these characters, and it was all tumultuous, and they all claimed that they believe in the end times, but they didn't trust each other. All those people got wiped out throughout the course of the story, and it was a whole new group of people that were there at the end of it. And oddly enough, Death was the one that went and wiped out all the other ones, and not on purpose. It was just kind of like of consequence. So that's why it's all those people there. It's all a group of peaceful people that either A, didn't want war to begin with, B, made smart decisions in those times and supported the right people and stayed back enough, or C, did go to war but had lost so much that what they had left was so rare that they wanted to protect it, and they chose peace to protect it instead of additional war. I thought that was like really, it took me a while. I was like, that was really deep, because I was like, why would these people just, after all this war? And I was like, oh, these are the people that didn't want war to begin with, and the only people that did want war, they're either dead or they lost everything, so they're willing to sign. Which was Death's wife. She thought she lost her husband because he was gone, and he went to go get their son, and she didn't see him come back. So she was like, I got a few people left from my country. My husband is probably dead, and he didn't bring back my son. So I'm just going to sign this, and I hope they are alive. So I thought that was pretty cool. So the third act, Wes, the third act. Tell me about it. What'd you think?
Well, it's pretty interesting. Death is essentially mortally wounded in his encounter with the three other horsemen, and he's taking his son back to his mother. He wants to bring him back and to reunite him with the person that loves him. And there's a nice goodbye, and then there's some pretty good closure, and then shockingly, it ends on a very hopeful note, like not something you would have expected out of this comic book. It's not a hopeful comic book. It's not a hopeful story. So I was surprised that Hickman was able to spin it that way, but he left it on a very hopeful ending. So congratulations to him, because I wouldn't have expected that.
I fully agree. I'm actually going to jump back. So this was something that was said actually by Belle Solomon, one of the last people that died in the book. And this is on the cover of every single book. And this is like the mission statement for the book. This is the world. It's not the one we were supposed to have, but it's the one we made. We did this. We did it with open eyes and willing hands. We broke it, and there's no putting it back together. And it's funny, going back and rereading it, I finally got to the part where I found the quote, and it was Belle Solomon, and he's the one that had said that. And he's like a person who's like basically, after going through everything, being a survivor of some of the hardest times, he's just kind of mentally done. He's on, you can call it PTSD. I'd say it is a little closer to the old term shell shocked. He's just out of it. He's had his fill. He doesn't want to do this anymore. And he survived all the way to the end.
Over so many times. I remember that character. He was very opportunistic, and if once he saw an opportunity to screw you over and maybe move himself in half an inch forward, he would do it to anybody.
Exactly.
If you do that enough, you become the most paranoid person in the world, because you're waiting for the shoe to drop on you.
Exactly. And then you take a character, and then you take a character like Archibald, who he's the sleaziest of them all. Like, he's not waiting for opportunities, he's creating opportunities. So he's looking at Belle like, you're trying to take wherever you can get in every inch, because you've lost everything and you're disoriented, and I'm going to make it so you owe me. And then now he just attaches himself to it. Those are two of the worst type of people to have together. Someone who is always looking to get one up on you, because they're just over all of this, and that's the only thing they have to gain is their next positional step. And then a person who he's screwing everybody over, they were the worst, but they went out together perfectly. That was the great thing. So for that to be the mission statement. Oh, and then the second one, I always forget this one. They always put this. That's the one that's at the front of the book. The one that's at the end of the book is, we would tell you to pray, but it wouldn't do any good. You have earned what is coming to you. So if those two quotes are the mission statement of the book, you would not think that it would end on such a beautiful note. But as it was, like you were saying, death ultimately succumbed to his wounds, and he told the balloon, who is essentially lying to the kid the whole time, because he was the one still running the operating system where the kid doesn't even see things for the way that they actually are. One of the last big things was, it was interesting because when death was alive before, he was all black, and when he came back, he was all white, which was interesting. But when the kids saw him, they finally showed how Babylon, which is perfect name, how Babylon saw his dad. He still saw his dad as the scary death, all black figure, like completely black, the darkness essentially. And he told, when death was dying, he told the balloon, he said, do what I told you, do what we agreed on. And he said, yeah, I'll take him to his mother. He said, that's not the only thing, you know what I'm talking about. So ultimately death dies, the balloon starts going up, and they go to his mother's, what's left of her nation after she signed the treaty, and she's back and she thinks everybody's dead. She sees that her son is coming down, so she starts running towards him because she hasn't seen him in years. And she's like, I'm pretty sure that's him. So she's running towards him. She looks like a scary monster. So Babylon's like, balloon, like deploy countermeasures, what we're supposed to do. And he's turning away, and the balloon has to tell him, hey, remember that thing that your dad told you? It wasn't just about taking you to your mother. It's also about the way that you see the world. You don't see the world the way it actually is. And he says, I know, I see the world in a great way. He said, no, take off your helmet. And the kid's like, I don't want to take off my helmet. He's like, take off your helmet. It was your dad's last wish. Take it off. And he took off his helmet, and he's like, I was afraid that what the world would look like. And he says, and the world looks so, and he looks up and he sees his mom, and he sees, instead of seeing like beautiful, like green grass, what the display was showing him, he sees destruction, and he says, the world is beautiful. I was like, wow, that was like one of the biggest things that hit me. That finally, when he took it off, he was seeing all these different things, and he thought the world was beautiful once he took the helmet off. That was great. And his mom just hugs him. And then the last thing, before we wrap it up, she's putting her nation back together. She's lost her son. And I'm just kind of gonna read the dialogue because I think it's just beautiful. She says, this is called progress, son. We build things up, even rebuild them if they have fallen. And when it's done, society moves forward. But it's not what matters. And the robot chimes in, basically saying there's a 92% chance that your mom is getting ready to quote your dad. And then and it's cool to see Babylon without his helmet off, because he looks just like a little version of his dad, which is so cool. And he said, yeah, probably higher, but I still want to hear her say it. And she says, here's what your father would have said. It's easy to destroy things, to break them, to even kill them. Nations, buildings, people. Everything in this world is just fragile. But what holds it together ain't it all. Love. It'll outlast everything on this planet. It's what formed the earth. It's what shaped it. Love's what makes someone give their life for another, make them do it without even thinking twice. It's what makes this world home. And don't you ever forget it. And it's just like a beautiful sunset with her arm around her son. And that's how it ends.
Yeah, it's very nice ending. It's very symbolic of a new day. Is the this day is passing, a new day is coming up. It's a new future and everything. But also, I do want to mention the character designs in this comic book are severely original and excellent, especially the Ranger and what's her name, the Crow.
Crow. Yep. Crow. Yep. Who turns in Wolf and Crow. They're both they're both from the Endless Nation. That was that nation that essentially represented the Native Americans they came and they tried to be a part of everything. It didn't work out. So they went back up into like Montana and South Dakota and everything. They shut themselves off for the world. They ended up creating all this crazy technology. And when they reintroduced themselves, they were selling the rest of the world automatons and stuff like that and different weapons. And that's how they gained all of that. But when they came back out, along with the character, like their character design was crazy too. Their mask that they put on that has the visors, and instead of the regular feathers, they're all these like digital technology feathers. So cool.
Yeah. So the character designs in this book are 100% fantastic. If you like really cool designs, you like world building, if you like deep intellectual storytelling, character driven stories, but with action, East to West is probably for you. If you like capes and superheroes, probably not your comic.
Nope. there's no superheroes in it at all. No capes. There are some heroes. There's some fantastic action, but this is definitely not traditional storybook telling. This is very much an indie comic. It's very much its own type of original story. But like Wes said, if you like, different storyline, I mean, the closest thing I can compare it to, and I haven't seen the show a lot, but it's just but it has a little bit better pace. It's something like Game of Thrones, where characters get introduced and they don't last forever. They die. Some of them die almost immediately. Some of them die later on. And it affects the people around them. But what I will say is that all of the deaths are like meaningful. None of them are meaningless. That is a knock that I personally had on Game of Thrones. I thought some of it was a little too gratuitous, even though they had consequences. I didn't always feel like the deaths that I had seen were meaningful. But don't get me wrong, a majority, like a good majority of them are. But in this one, it doesn't waste a single one. If someone dies in there, like they get a scene, there's a reason, and it either sets up something bigger or it closes a chapter on something. And this book, it didn't leave a single loose end. It put a bow on every single thing. So if you want to see incredible line work with fantastic imagination, beautiful colors, and like we said, it's Frank Martin Jr., so the quality of his work if you checked out the Carnage books with Donny Cates and Stegman. It's some of the best dialogue, continually some of the best dialogue, issue to issue, and they don't waste. I think there might have been one issue that I remember, possibly 2 out of 45, where the ending wasn't so much of like a solid ending, but it was never a disappointing one, not even once. Every time they didn't write for the trades in this at all. They were like, hey, every time you get one of these, it's a haymaker. And sometimes most of the time was on the chin, and every now and then it was a body shot, but it was still a haymaker that they thrown. So that's why it's my favorite comic book easily of all time. The craftsmanship is incredible. The twists, the turns, none of them are cheap. None of them are just to subvert your expectations. They all prove a point. They all have a purpose, and it's fantastic, man. I couldn't recommend a book higher. And what's lovely about it is if you want to catch up on digital, like some of them are on Comixology, so you can catch up that way.
Volumes are on Comixology Unlimited.
So you can go through all of those. That's half of it right there. And then after that, since it's Image Comics, it's $2.99 per issue. I think if you have a Comixology subscription, you go to Comixology.com. Some of them sometimes are even like cheaper. I think I've seen like some criminal books that are $1.99 that are only 89 cents because I have Amazon Prime and Comixology. So no reason not to support this stuff and just catch up on one. And also for people that are like, what was up with this Jonathan Hickman guy? I know he did, Infinity, and I know he did a really good, so-and-so run, but it's starting to feel like he might have lost his juice after Hawks and Pox and that horticulture issue. This stuff like this and Black Monday Murders by Jonathan Hickman, this is him at his best. So definitely check this stuff out if you did enjoy House of X and Powers of 10, just the quality of writing. It's all
right.
East of West.
We're running late here, but I do got a couple more questions for you. I saw at the end that Nick Dragotta is working on a new book for Image called Tramp. Is he the writer and artist, or is he just the name artist?
He's the writer and artist. He did help with some of the writing on East of West. Issue number 22, which is my favorite, which he gave to me, and he drew death on it for me and signed to me, which was amazing. But he fully scripted that one, and that was my favorite one of the whole one. So he's the artist and the writer. I don't know if he's gonna get it colored as of right now. From what I know, it's just all just, you know, pencils and inks. But I'll as we go on, when we do maybe a Geek Span in a few weeks, I'll reach out to him and I'll try to get some more info for that.
Perfect. Book. And what's the next Jonathan Hickman Image comic? I believe it's called Decorum.
Yeah, I believe it is Decorum. I don't know a lot about that book, actually.
Look at the cover. Looks very similar to some House of X Powers of 10 stuff.
Is that right? I've only seen what he showed on Twitter, so I'm gonna have to look it up more myself. But it would make sense. Like Jonathan Hickman, that's one thing about him. He knows where the money is. He's trying to break over into the screenwriting side and all that stuff too, like, you know, Mark Millar and Rick Remender and all the guys. And I believe he should be right there. But he knows where the money is. So if people like that stuff, of course he's going to follow up with his own version of it, because all that money goes right into his pocket. So good on him.
If you like Hawks and Pox, I think Decor might be the comic for us. You know, without the X-Men characters, we ran late. You know, we're at 31 minutes now. Skip, we're gonna have to say goodbye later, buddy.
Later, y'all.